do want to switch gears and do want to talk about something that I promised that we would talk about here on Wednesday's Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. If you listen to yesterday's show on Tuesday, I recorded obviously late Monday night after the Clemson game. And I figured rather than forcing all the Clemson talk into one conversation into one show, let's save it for Wednesday's show. We'll be 24 hours removed from the Clemson game, and we can kind of separate it from everything else that happened over the course of the weekend, specifically the LSU game, the Florida game, the Ohio State game, Georgia, whatever. And so I do want to talk about Clemson because on the one hand, they did win 41-10, dominant fashion over Georgia Tech. But if you watch the game, you also saw something else. You saw something that we have talked about quite a bit on this show, and really something kind of came to fruition that we've discussed over the last probably 3 to 4 weeks. If you've listened to this show in the lead up to the season, you know that I have said something pretty consistently about Clemson. I've said that I believe that Clemson's quarterback position is the single most important position in all of college football. Now, there may be more talented play, I don't want to say the Clemson quarterback is the most important player in college football. That might be Bryce Young or Caleb Williams, maybe Quinn Ewers, maybe Anthony Richardson. I don't know. Maybe Will Levis at Kentucky. But the single most important position is the quarterback position at Clemson. It is because Clemson is one of the few teams that in most spots really is good enough to win a national championship. Now, their O-line isn't great. Their wide receiver core isn't elite, but the defense is next level. The defense is, maybe if it's not quite Georgia, it's pretty darn close. But Dabo Swinney has said that he believes he has upwards of 8 defensive linemen that will one day be drafted. And realistically, probably 3 to 4 guys on this year's defense that are going to be drafted in the first round this year. So the defense is elite. But what held Clemson back last year when they went 10-3 was the quarterback position, and specifically the quarterback, DJ Uiagalelei. And so as I've said all offseason, the quarterback position is the single most important position in college football when it comes to Clemson. Whether it's DJ, whether it's his backup. If you get good quarterback play, you can win a national championship. If you get elite quarterback play, you might be the favorite. But if you get bad quarterback play like you did last year, you're not going to make the playoff. You're not going to make the ACC championship game. You're not even going to win the conference title like a season ago. And so I bring it up because I think that conversation, frankly, came to fruition on Monday night in Atlanta. As I said, Clemson gets the win, but unfortunately, I think we saw a lot from DJ on Monday night that looked awfully similar to what we saw from him last year. And while I don't want to overreact to one game, and while I don't want to put it all on one kid, I do think it's pretty clear to anybody that watched, there might be a better quarterback on the bench. Dabo Swinney might have a really tough decision to make when it comes to the quarterback position. And so let's get into it, because I do think if you didn't watch the game, I think it'd be easy to kind of look at the box score and say, Clemson won by 31 points. What are you complaining about, Torres? What are you talking about? And while I certainly think there's something to it, and it's a credit to Clemson, I think one thing we always do on this show, we go beyond the box score, right? I'm not a box score chaser guy. I watch the games. I react to the games. I analyze the games. I think that's one of the reasons why you guys and girls like this show so much. I'm not pulling stuff out of my you-know-what. And so if you watch the Clemson game on Monday night, it was certainly a great effort, especially by the defense. But the 41 points is a bit deceptive, especially when it comes to the starting quarterback, DJ Uiagalelei. Why is that? Well, first of all, first touchdown of the game for Clemson comes off of a block punt, which puts Clemson's offense inside the 10-yard line, punching in for a touchdown. And even then, they needed to convert a 4th down. It's worth noting. Beyond that, second half, Georgia Tech, one of the worst teams in Power 5 football last year, cut the lead to 14-10. And while DJ did make some nice plays in the second half, they also had another touchdown set up by a special teams play, 15 yards for a touchdown. Didn't exactly drive the length of the field. And then late in the game, Clemson scored a touchdown when DJ was off and his backup was in the game. And so it's easy to look at the stat sheet. It's easy to sit there and say Clemson scored 41 points. How can you say there's a quarterback controversy? And in DJ's defense, he was fine. He was actually okay. Had a couple really nice plays, had a nice touchdown pass in the corner of the end zone. And his defense, his receivers dropped some passes that probably should have been caught. The O-line, I don't think, is elite. But what I also saw from DJ is, unfortunately, a guy that, I'll be honest, he looked a lot like the guy from last year. And I know I just said a second ago, I don't read box scores. I don't use box scores to analyze games. I do think it's kind of interesting to look at last year versus this year. Last year, when we realized he's not good enough. He's just not good enough, not at the level that Clemson needs him to be. Here were his stats last year. Completed 56% of his passes, 9 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and his completions went for about 6 yards per completion. Let's compare that to Monday night. On Monday night, DJ went 19 for 32 passing. That's 59%. 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions, 6.5 yards per completion. So last year, 55%, 6 yards per completion, 9 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. This year, 59%, 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions, 6.5 yards per. It's the exact same stat line from last year as to this year. And beyond that, what I would also say, if you watch the game, you could tell that Clemson was play calling in a way that they were afraid to let him loose. First off, he had 13 carries on Monday night. How many elite quarterbacks do you see getting 13 carries in a season opener? I looked it up. Bryce Young had 5. Stetson Bennett had 2. DJ had 13. Now, some of them were design runs. Some of them were broken plays where he had to run. But sometimes it was a broken play because he just didn't make a quick enough decision. And so if you watch the game, you could just see it was so obvious the Clemson coaching staff was afraid to let him do anything and afraid to let him lose the game for them. Clemson gets the win. They're 1-0, good for them. But what stood out to me is the conversation that we've been having about Clemson, frankly, since last probably November or December. It's that last year, DJ was not very good. The defense was great, but they really had no choice but to stick with him when times got tough. The difference is this year, they don't have to stick with him. And you know why? Because they got a pretty good backup named Cade Klubnik. As a matter of fact, he's not just a good backup. He might be the best backup in college football. Last year, number 1 ranked quarterback in high school football, according to 24/7 Sports, from Texas, commits to Clemson over Texas and Texas A&M. But more importantly, if you watch till the end of the game, I don't even think it's a debate who the better quarterback is. And this kid was in his first game as quarterback. Comes in the game, 4 of 6 passing, 50 yards, 1 touchdown. So it took him 6 passes to throw a touchdown, 32 for DJ. He averaged 8.5 yards per completion, DJ 6.5 yards. And if you watch the game, what was so impressive was there was just so much poise, so much confidence, walked in the huddle, felt like he knew exactly what he was doing, takes him down the field, in no time it scores a touchdown. And so what I'm trying to say is, I want to bring it back full circle. I do think Dabo Swinney has a really tough decision to make. Because what I can tell you is, as I look at this whole situation, I can't sit here and definitively tell you that Cade Klubnik is a quarterback that's good enough as a freshman to win you a national championship. But I saw enough in 6 passes, 1 series, to know that he is a better upside than DJ. Not that DJ is a bad kid, not he's a bad person, not whatever. But I do think Dabo Swinney has a tough decision to make, and I think eventually he's got to make the move to Cade Klubnik if Clemson wants to compete at the highest level. First off, there's a couple reasons why. One, the plan is, here's my thought on why Dabo has to make the move soon. One, the title window is now, okay? You look at that defense. Brian Brzee, who was awesome on Monday night. Miles Murphy. A lot of these guys aren't going to be around next year. So while you're always going to have talent on your defense at Clemson, their defense this year is like next level talent. Again, I'm not going to compare anything to Georgia last year, but we're talking about 3 to 4 first rounders on this year's team right now, this second. So the window is now. And the other thing that struck me while I was watching this game, the plan was never for DJ to be there beyond this year anyway, right? And so in this transfer portal era, we all knew DJ came in expecting to be a 3 and done. In other words, come in, back up Trevor Lawrence for a year, and then beyond that, play for 2 years, get out, make way for the next guy. That was the plan when Cade Klubnik committed. Well, the plan's off the rails, and now in this transfer portal world, 2 things strike. One, you were already anticipating not having DJ next year, so why not rip off the Band-Aid now? But 2, if you goof off, 1, you might lose the locker room, and 2, Cade Klubnik can transfer. He can hit that portal and be somewhere else and playing next year. And so I'm not saying you don't play Cade Klubnik if he's not the guy. I'm not saying you bench DJ tomorrow and name him the starter. But it's clear in short order that he appears to be the better guy. And beyond that, in this one-time transfer world, you got to do it. Finally, what I would say is I also think the other thing that strikes me is it's not like Dabo hasn't done this before, right? What was it, 4 or 5 years ago? Trevor Lawrence, back up to Kelly Bryant coming into the year, early in the season, getting some reps. Then what ends up happening? It's clear after game 2, game 3, game 4, Trevor Lawrence is the best player, and Dabo benched him. And so if Dabo has done it before, and it's not like other coaches haven't either. Nick Saban did it in a national championship game. Lincoln Riley did it last year with Spencer Rattler. At some point, Dabo has to rip the Band-Aid off, and I do wonder if we're looking at the same situation as Trevor Lawrence 2.0. Not saying this kid's Trevor Lawrence, not saying he's going to be the number 1 pick, not saying he's a generational talent. But if you look at the situation, Clemson got the win on Monday night. They're now 1-0. And they have a scenario where they have 2 very winnable games going forward, one against Furman, the next against Louisiana Tech, where I do think you play both and you let the public decide. You know what this kind of reminds me of? What's going on in Michigan right now. I've said from the beginning with J.J. McCarthy, I think that Jim Harbaugh knows the better quarterback is the backup, but he doesn't want to bench the guy that led him to a Big Ten title last year. So rather than bench Cade McNamara, he's going to let both play publicly. Everybody's going to see that J.J. McCarthy's better than he can put in the backup. I wonder if Dabo does the same over the next 2 games. I wonder if Dabo gets Cade Klubnik in early. Everybody sees that he's the better quarterback, and then he doesn't have to feel guilty benching DJ. So to me, I think this is one of the more fascinating stories that came out of the weekend. I'm glad we decided to wait until Wednesday's show to kind of break it down and kind of talk about it in depth because there was so much going on to react to on Tuesday. But to me, I think Dabo's got a tough decision to make. But I'll be honest, I actually don't think it's a very tough decision at all.